tensions between Russia and Ukraine defined pretty much a large part of Jens Stoltenberg's time and career as he served as NATO Secretary General. If you ask anybody in this country, Jens Stoltenberg, well, somewhere between myth, God and man, as told in his book On My Watch, leading NATO in a time of war. Now, Mr. Stoltenberg has come back to Norway for a second term as Norway's finance minister. It was in the 90s when he last did it. His determination to end the conflict remains as strong as ever.
I welcome that the US is now taking the leadership of a dialogue process that hopefully can bring us to some lasting and just settlement to this conflict.
Every time we look at this, and you've looked at it more than anybody, it always comes down to the same 2 or 3 facts. Land in the east, troops in the country, whether it's European force or otherwise, and membership of NATO. These are red lines on one side, the opposite is a red line on the other side. How do you square that circle?
The only way to square that circle is to start by agreeing a ceasefire. Ukraine has actually indicated that they're willing to agree a ceasefire along the current front line. It's not for me to decide, but if they accept it, I think that will be the first step towards end to the conflict. Then based on that, negotiations should start in good faith to find a lasting solution. And of course, what Ukraine needs is that if they cede any territory, they need at least security, that it stops here, because we have had agreements with Russia before. In '94, when Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons, and also the Minsk agreements, and Russia has violated these agreements again and again. So if there's a new agreement now, there has to be some guarantees that it stops there, and that means enabling the Ukrainians at least to defend themselves.
Yeah, but you see, the problem is, I mean, there is this argument, of course, that Ukraine and NATO provoked the expansion of NATO further east. You've heard this a million times, that Putin had always wanted an excuse to do it, and you gave him one.
But I will never accept that a big power like Russia can decide what sovereign independent neighbors can do or not do. It's part of being a sovereign nation that you can decide your own security arrangements. That is actually enshrined in treaties that also Russia has signed. And me, coming from Norway, back in '94, in '49, when NATO was established, Norway was the only country bordering Russia. And Russia said that was a provocation, that Norway joined NATO. I'm very happy that London, Washington, Paris said, no, it's for Norway to decide, and to not a provocation or a threat against Russia that Norway joined NATO in 1949.
So now to your book, which is, there's a very interesting aspect where you talk about having to tell Zelensky that he's not getting air support, that you're not going to do it. And the reason is you don't want to make it worse. I mean, it's as nakedly obvious and blunt as that. And that's the dilemma for NATO in all of this, isn't it? That is the problem that you can't escape, or NATO can't escape. How far can you go to support Ukraine without ending up in a war yourself?
Well, the dilemma has been there since the beginning, because in the morning...
It's getting worse.
Maybe, but the thing is that in the morning of the invasion, NATO made 2 decisions on the 24th of February 2022. The first decision was to step up the military support for Ukraine, as we did. But the second decision was to prevent the war between Russia and Ukraine to escalate into full-scale war between Russia and NATO. And of course, there is a contradiction there. And I'm trying to be honest about that. And that contradiction was pinpointed when Zelensky asked for Norway and for NATO to close the airspace of Ukraine. And I told them we cannot do it because then NATO will be directly involved in a military conflict with Russia. What we can do is that we can continue to provide equipment, missiles, ammunition, advanced weapon systems to Ukraine, and financial support and sanctions against Russia, and that will pay and also make sure that Russia pays a high price for their aggression against Ukraine.